Hi, everyone, and welcome to Gladverse TV, the show where the silver lining is always our North Star. I'm Laura Borland, your host, and today we're going to be speaking about a very, can be triggering topic, but I believe I have the best audience, best guest to speak about it. And today we're going to be speaking about bouncing back from abuse. So I'm so pleased to introduce to you our guest is Shari Botwin. She's a licensed clinical social worker who has a 25-year private practice in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Prior to starting her own practice, Shari worked in Philadelphia, and she provides individual, group, and family therapy with a specialization in treating trauma, abuse, eating disorders, anxiety, and depression. She's also conducting teletherapy with a HIPAA-approved online platform. Her second book, which has just recently been re-released, is called Thriving After Trauma, Stories of Living and Healing, and it's available worldwide in hardcover, audio, and ebook. Welcome, 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 Shari.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here. This is a very touchy topic, but it is so pervasive that I think it requires a very candid and frank discussion about what abuse is and the different types of abuse and lived experiences that so many not only women, but people in general have experienced, stemming all the way from childhood to pretty much your senior years. Can you just share a little bit?
Sure. So I've been working as a therapist for about 25 years now. And when I first started working in the field, I was doing more work with people who are in recovery from eating disorders. And what I learned in my mid-20s was that most people who were struggling with things like eating disorders, addiction, self-destructive behaviors also had some type of trauma in their history that they had never dealt with, that got buried. So what happened was when I first started working in the eating disorder field, I recognized there was a lot of secrets that I was keeping from myself, that I too was struggling with an eating disorder and did not even know it. So I got myself into very intensive therapy for a good 10 years. And while I did that, I learned more and more about the trauma connection with other issues. And then what happened is through the last 15, 16 years, the bulk of the people that I work with, the bulk of the people that I'm counseling are coming to therapy because they too are pushing away, burying different life experiences that left them feeling traumatized, silenced, overwhelmed. And I do work with people who have survived a variety of different types of trauma. I know today we're really going to be focusing more on abuse. And one of the things that I've seen is that most people that come to see me, men and women, are reporting some type of abuse in their history, usually in childhood, and most of the time by somebody that they loved, somebody that was supposed to take care of them, oftentimes in their own families.
You know, it's so interesting that you should say that, because as I've been going through this exercise of doing this whole Bounceback series, there's so many common threads that have been showing up. The trauma being linked to abuse, linked to some kind of childhood stressor, linked to sexual abuse, just so many different areas in which, we weren't really taught how to cope or to speak out about it. And I'm so heartened in a way that in the current environment, you are encouraged to speak up. You are encouraged to call out those things that are hurtful. And I would like to know, in your 25 years in practice, are you seeing a shift in terms of people being more receptive to mental health care, to being more open about the traumas or the abuses they've experienced?
Such a good question, because I work with a wide variety of ages. I see people in their teens up through their 70s. And one of the things that I notice is the younger people, the teenagers, the young adults in their 20s, they come in and they're so open and free about why they're seeing me. They can talk about different types of things they've been through. And what's refreshing for me to see is I know that the sooner that somebody speaks, the less damage, the less lifelong, long-term impact they don't have to necessarily be suffering like some of the other people that maybe I met 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, that back then it was so taboo to talk about different types of abuse. I feel like that's one of the things I really love about the work. And I think it's one of the silver linings to #MeToo, the pandemic, more attention on mental health. We still have a long, long way to go, but in terms of people's availability to asking for help, I have teenagers and young adults who will sit in session with their best friend in the room, or they'll be in their car with their parent, because teletherapy can happen anywhere, right? And I laugh, I say, I thought therapy was supposed to be private. Like, when I was in therapy talking about my abuse, I felt so much shame about it. I couldn't even look at my therapist. And now I have people who are coming into my office and they're so much more free, even though they're in so much pain, and they have some of the same issues that I struggled with and that people that I know struggle with from years ago. There's a sense of liberation and a sense of empowerment, because once they face and speak their truth, they're not just coming to therapy, they're out there doing all these amazing things. They're speaking, they're advocating, they're writing to Congress, they're joining forces with different survivor advocacy groups, because we need to make a change. It can't just be go to therapy if you've been abused. We need laws to change. We need more education. We need, like you said, we need people to know how to cope with these types of issues. So I feel like that's a very hopeful sign now moving forward, especially for my kids' generation. I think it's amazing.
I think so too. And I think having a forum like this in which you're able to share what you're seeing, and not only that too, but also sharing, maybe a best practice that someone who's going through that situation has never heard of, and they're kind of like spinning their wheels, like, what do I do next? So I'm glad that we have forums like this. We have young people who are speaking out. We have people who are saying, look, there's no shame in the mental health game, right? That the mental health is just as important and as vital as the physical. And the energy that, the complete being requires the care for here as well. So it's not only the physical, but also what's going on in here. And, I'm just really heartened at the fact that we're just kind of being able to speak our truth. And there's still some judgment sometimes, but it's not to the extent that it was a few years ago.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a shift. I think, unfortunately, the only thing that I'm not seeing change still is that when people are speaking out about abuse in their families, their family members are not able to support them, hear them, accept the truth. So in that way, I feel like we're still really struggling. But what I say to people is, so go out in the world and connect with other survivors. Go out in the world and what I call family by choice. Go out there. If the family that you grew up in can't hear or know what happened to you, and this is my experience as well, then go out there and create your own family. Go out there and bring people into your life that are able to hear what you have to say. And they don't all have to be trauma survivors. They could just be regular people who are saying, these are things that should not have happened to you. This is not your fault. We don't judge you for this. You're not just an abuse survivor. You're also an X, Y, and Z. So I think that if as a society, we're more open, it helps people who come from families where there's so much pathology to still live a great life, make connections, have their own families. And again, sometimes families by choice.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the most difficult thing for abuse survivors, as you are alluding to, is the loss of the family. To have people not believe their stories, to deny their stories. And I can imagine that divorce is sometimes the hardest part to work through.
I think it is. I think when you're in recovery and you're trying to make sense of why somebody would hurt you so badly, there's a part of us, I think, that can understand the pathology of the predator, of the person committing the act of sexual violence or sexual abuse, but to try and figure out, but why does my mom turn her back on me? Or why are my sisters or my brothers, my witnesses, why can't they support me? What that betrayal sometimes is even harder to live with, because you can look at them and think, but they're not the ones who are abusing me. So why would they take the side of the abuser? Why would they support that? And I think now I understand it a little bit better, but I will tell you the estrangement that people have had to go through, the betrayal, that's often the most difficult part, and the part of recovery that can leave people, I think, feeling the most hopeless.
Mhm. For sure. You know, it's I've often tried to understand the other side of the family, you know, the ones not hearing or wanting to hear about that. But the only thing I can theorize is the majority of people I meet, like, they live in a fantasy world. Everything is about escaping, right? So, you know, you binge watch Netflix because you don't want to, you know, have a quiet moment to be still with your thoughts and your being, right? You are constantly, you know, happy hour Friday night, you know, to the football game on Sunday, to, you know, just constant this barrage of creating, you know, these spaces of escape. And there's also a story and an image that they have in their mind that anything that comes counter to that evokes this response, like, look, you're lying because this is my worldview and you're not going to put a disruptor in it. And so and that's why I believe sometimes I guess people just don't want to believe that there could be a family member that would do that to another family member.
I mean, that's it right there. I can't wrap my head around that. I can't think that my own husband or my brother or my son's coach, whoever it is, teacher, would do that to whoever that person is saying, whoever the loved one is. And what I say is the denial, the defense mechanism of denial is so strong that that's one of the reasons why so many people stay silent, because they know that if they come forward and speak about the teacher, the parent, the doctor, whoever the person is that caused the harm, there's a good chance that people are not going to believe them. So what I try to say to survivors is, if you're speaking your truth and you're being told it's not so, that's not about you. That's about the other person. That's the other person's limitation. You need to stick with and hold your line. You need to not, because what happens a lot is people speak up and they speak out, and then they're told, you're lying. How could you say this? And then they say to me, maybe I made it all up. Maybe it's not true. And then I say, but what do you feel in your heart? What do you feel in your body? What do you feel when you go to sleep at night? Because our bodies and our hearts and minds do not lie to us.
So true. So true. And, you know, it's something I say about journaling all the time too. You can keep up facades with everybody else. You can wear multiple faces throughout your day. But when you're writing on a piece of paper and pouring your heart out, that's your truth. And you experience something. And it to me, it's that is another form of abuse, to have people start doubting themselves. Like, I know what I experienced. What are you saying? Of course this happened, right? But to infuse this idea like, oh yeah, you're lying, there's no way that could have happened, and having you doubt yourself, it's almost like inflicting additional pain into a situation like that. So I want to ask you and pivot a little bit. In the successful treatments that you've had, right? In those people who have transcended, forgiven, released, are still working through it, but are definitely on the other side, on the mend. What are some of the practices that you've observed that might be common? Or maybe the mindset?
The mindset is, I'm not going to let what happened to me stop me from having a boyfriend, having a child, telling somebody I'm pissed off at them, spending more money on myself because I'm worth it. The mindset is about being in the present and looking to the future and thinking about how can I take some of those messages that were sort of instilled in me and how can I reframe them and how can I leave the hurt and the toxicity outside of myself and how can I reclaim and own my own life?
I love that.
I mean, I don't know if that's answering the question because it's
It
not so
answers it
tangible.
beautifully. It does, because I really do believe that your mindset has a lot to do with the extent of the healing and the quality of the healing that you have. And I think a big part of that is letting go. We can play in our minds in that perpetual loop, the story that happened back then. And there's no denying that it did happen. But I do know that every time I recall like a traumatic event, the story changes just a little bit. Just a little bit. Maybe I'm seeing it from a different angle, but it's never quite the same story that's being told. But you can choose to look at that and just go, you know what? That was a part of my life. However, because of those situations, it has led me to go on to create journals, to, set up something like this where I can be of support to other people. How has that trauma pivoted into something that, to your point, and the point of this show is really the silver lining? What was a message in that hurt? What was a positive in that hurt? And I know that from my experiences, it was a driving force for me to get into the work of helping, get into the work of teaching, get into the work of being an advocate, get into the work of being a voice in a world where a lot of people don't like to speak about it and they like to keep it closed in. And in those, I had people who rejected my conversations, who had a very difficult and were upset that I would have those frank discussions about being a sexual assault survivor. But it was necessary because I'll just give you an example. There was one instance where I remember exactly what it was, but I did a talk about, not necessarily the descriptive aspects of being a sexual assault survivor, but the fact that I was, and it triggered this one person who was just like, oh, I can't believe you're having this discussion, blah, blah, blah. It's, it's private, blah, blah, blah. But within that same group, there were two young women who came forward and were just, the tears just fell, like they felt heard. They felt like they weren't alone. And that's a power of you doing what you're doing, Shari, being here, sharing what you're seeing, letting, viewers know that this is okay. It is okay to seek that mental, the therapies. It's okay to speak to someone. It's okay to be loud about it. And it's okay to process, compartmentalize, and move forward as a strategy.
And you know what? While it's not okay to feel disbelieved or unheard, it's okay in the sense that if somebody can't hear you and know who you are, that's something about them. That's something they can't deal with. And you can say to yourself, it's not okay, but I'm okay. I'm not going to let the silencers and the enablers hold me back from doing what I want to do about my story and doing what I want to do with my experience.
Yeah, I'm curious though, Shari, because I think, I'm going to speak from my own perspective. I am often like, I take it personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm laughing because I'm like, Jesus. There were so many times where I would feel like that too. Like, is it me? Is there something wrong with me? Maybe I should have said something. Maybe they don't like me. They don't understand. But it's not about us. Often what I think happens is there are so many people. You asked me to look up some statistics. It says the statistics say 1 out of every 3 women and 1 out of every 5 men have been abused as a child. So then you think about all the people who told me I was crazy or told me I was making it up. What I realize and what I know is some of them were abused too. They just can't face it. So what they do to protect themselves from their own truth is they dismiss us in our story. And that's when you know it's not personal. It's about the other person, because if they're dismissing something that we're sharing because of their own experience, that has nothing to do with you, me, or whoever is speaking. That's about them.
I know, but here,
Yeah.
Shari, it's just in the moment. It feels ugly.
It's
It takes
awful.
it takes a bit of introspection to go, okay, well, okay, it's on them, and to really let that go. But we can certainly, my mind works like that. I'm like reliving that. Oh, okay, did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? But I know that there's this whole this cliche that you use, that hurt people hurt people, and it's so true. It's overused, I think, but it is so true. And it's just really learning to just not take, again, everything personally,
Right.
and to walk with an air of compassion too.
Right. And again, like when you think about the topic, when you talk about bouncing back from abuse, these are not experiences that you just sort of get up and keep going. Sometimes we have to accept my feelings are hurt, or I feel misunderstood, and we have to sit in that space, because I think what happens is if we sit in that space for a minute, it's another opportunity to actually work through another layer of betrayal, shame, abandonment that maybe we haven't worked through before that experience with whoever that person was. So I always try to look at things, as much as I roll my eyes and I think, oh my gosh, these are all opportunities. Because my therapist used to say, wow, this is like the opportunity. And I'd be like, take your opportunities, and like all kind of curse words in my head. But it's the truth, though. It's the truth. So if somebody hurts us, it's another opportunity to understand what was it about what that person did that hurt us, and where is that coming from for me?
For sure. And sometimes the reason why we're hurt is because it just kind of touches a little nerve.
Hits a
So that
major
unexposed thing that you're speaking about, right? That exposed wire that we're supposed to see.
I think, when you are somebody who's dealt with abuse, there's always going to be something inside of you that could get triggered. I think that's one of the things that I've realized. I mean, I've been doing this long enough now that I know I'm never going to be fully over or done with what happened to me. I don't think of it like that. I don't think I'm going to have a great life, and I love my life, and I'm not letting what happened to me ruin it. But I do feel like there's so many layers to abuse, especially when we're younger, or teenagers, or young adults. And I think it's really about accepting that we're going to hit some bumps, we're going to have obstacles, we're going to have days where we're like, I don't even know. But then we bounce back, because we think about, what do we want for our lives today moving forward? And how can I use these different experiences to keep moving? Because the buttons are always going to be there. You can never get rid of something that deep. You can learn. What I say to people is, you don't get over it, you learn to live with it.
Yeah, and you learn not to dwell in it either. And I think the
Right.
dwelling in that place is what causes the issue.
Oh yeah,
so I choose to dwell in a much more positive, joyful, peaceful state, in recognition that every day I slip and I'm like, okay, what is this feeling? I don't like it. And I have to sit quietly and process that, figure out what's causing that, what the trigger is. But it's just being mindful of the ebbs and flows, and choosing the flows more so than the ebbs. So I really do believe that that's a big part of the mindset conversation, and what that looks like. And I also believe that's where being at peace with, okay, that happened, but being at peace with your present. And I think I mentioned this before, but I really believe strongly that we have a difficult time in our silence. And it is so important, I believe, to your point, where you're just like, okay, you're staying in a place where you're just standing still for a moment, to give yourself the time to process, to understand what's happening, to maybe put an identifier on it so that you can move on. But a lot of us like to escape.
Right. And, a lot of us had to escape during the abuse because it helped us to stay sane. So one of the things that, right. So one of the things that I try to think about is, but we're not in that situation now. So now it's a different time. So it's okay to redirect our coping strategies. We don't need to distract, drink, be on our phones all day anymore, because our life is safe. And then you try to think about, what are the things in my life that make me know that I'm safe, whether it's relationships, your job, your pets, whatever it is, your journal. And that helps people to no longer keep running, because I think the running from the feelings just delays the grieving, and it keeps people more stuck in the shame, I think.
Yeah, I love that word, that phrase you used about, about being safe, because I think that's where people, they need the most help on, is knowing that it's okay.
Right.
You're protected. You are all right.
Right.
No one's harming you here.
Right.
It's okay to be flat-footed for a moment and pause and breathe and sit still. So listen, I'm loving this discussion. I think this is one of the most powerful conversations I've had so far, because it feels very forthright. And it also, because of your degree of expertise, you lend a voice that shows the variety of the ways in which abuse expresses itself in others. So I want to thank you so much. And before we leave, I want you to share with our viewers just something that an actionable step they can take if they're, in that weird space, or they're dealing with issues of trauma or abuse.
I mean, I think we kind of are talking about it now. I think the thing that you want to do is you want to find a place or think about something that you can do that provides you with a feeling of safety, security, confidence. For me, it's hanging out with my gonna be 11-year-old son in 3 months. So last night I had a moment where we were all hanging out, meaning me, my little man, and my 2 kittens. And we all were together.
Yeah.
We were all sitting in the same, we were all sitting. I got this whole new bed set thing. And of course, my kid's he wants to have it now, right? So we were all just sitting there, and rarely do both of the cats sit together with us now, because they kind of they have their, sibling issues. And the orange cat put his paw on the calico. And then my little guy had his hand on the calico's head. And I was just like, this is such an amazing life. The amount of love that I felt. And for me, that's vindication, that's victory, that's revenge. Whatever people tried to do or whatever they did to me before, it cannot and will not stop me from feeling loved and giving love. So an actionable phrase or thing I say to people: it's okay to be angry, it's okay to hold people responsible, but at the end of the day, we've got to figure out how to also move into a place of knowing that we're worthy of being loved and that we're able to give it out. Because to me, that's living a full life, to have that feeling of connection, whether it's with your husband, your best friend, your whoever, your partner. For me, it's with my almost 11-year-old. To be able to be a parent and love differently than I was taken care of, that to me that's the ultimate, you can do this. If you can do that, you can pretty much do anything else.
I think that's brilliant. And I think when you mentioned that about just being in that space, there are times, okay, so I don't have children, but I have tons of nieces and nephews. And to me, the greatest joy for me were when the older ones were teenagers. And I had a 1-bedroom condo, and they would, I had to pull out sofa bed, and they would come and sleep over. It'd be 6 of them. And they would be camped out there, and it was crazy because sometimes they just didn't speak, but they were so close. I can't even explain it to you. They were all in the same room, just being amazing cousins and siblings to each other. And there was that comfort in the silence and the love in the silence. And that used to just fill my heart with just so much joy, to just watch how close they were.
Yeah.
And just knowing that I just felt the love in that room.
Yeah.
And those are the things that bring me joy. Because I'm sure your 11-year-old was probably on the other side of the bed. You probably weren't even touching him. but to just to observe that
Mhm.
moment.
And you know what I say to people? If you're having a hard day or you're feeling shame or you're struggling with something, that image, take it with you, lock it in your heart and brain, and use it and carry it with you, because that will get you through anything.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. I've never really thought about that, but
that's a huge piece to really moving forward after abuse, is learning how to internalize positive relationships and taking those images and just really grabbing them and locking them in your heart, your mind, your body. If you can picture that image of all your nieces and nephews standing around you when you're having a moment where you're like, I can't do this anymore, and just picture them looking at you and saying that they love you, and that can make a huge difference in the course of your day.
I love that.
My kid's here now. I mean, he's not literally here. He's at school, but the whole day while I'm working, the moment I look forward to is around 4:07. The front door goes crashing open. He comes in, he's like, I don't have homework, and blah, 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 blah. And he starts telling me about the day. And then he sits down and I look at him and I'm like, I just love him so, so much. And it's such a nothing moment, but for me, it's like, it's the happiest moment of the day. And so I think about that through the day when I'm like, oh my goodness, what more? I think, but at 4:07, it's going to be great again. So
that is beautiful.
Yeah.
That is definitely beautiful. Shari, I could speak to you for hours.
Oh.
I definitely could, but I think your message today was so incredibly powerful. New things for me to learn about this feeling of safety and really carving out that spot and taking those positive images in my heart for those days when things just are just not going the way that it should, right? But to definitely evoke and bring about a smile on the face. So I want to thank you so much. And your book, Thriving After Trauma, is available for download. And then I also, your links are going to be on the site anyway. So guys, viewers, pay attention. You can order Shari's book and you can meet with her as well. I'll leave her her therapy, her business practice links as well. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.